The summons. The crystalline spires of the Zephyrian Empire's capital world gleamed under three suns. Inside the highest tower, Supreme Chancellor Stor paced nervously across the polished floor. His forearms clasped and unclasped behind his elongated back. His species, the Zephyrians, had ruled this sector of the galaxy for over 5,000 years. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had witnessed the birth of new civilizations and the death of old ones. But nothing had prepared them for humanity. Admiral Sarah Blackwood stood on the bridge of the USS Prometheus, staring at the quantum communication that had just arrived. The message was short but carried the weight of diplomatic urgency. The Galactic Assembly demanded humanity's immediate presence to answer for their military activities in the Perseus Arm. Sarah ran her fingers through her graying hair. 25 years in the United Earth Navy had prepared her for many things, but intergalactic politics was still relatively new territory for humanity. The journey to the assembly station took 3 days through hyperspace. The Prometheus traveled alone as requested by the Council. It was a gesture of good faith, though Sarah knew the rest of the Fifth Fleet maintained position just outside sensor range. Humanity had learned early in their spacefaring days that trust was earned slowly, but could be lost in an instant. As the massive station came into view, Sarah couldn't help but be impressed. The structure was a marvel of engineering, a perfect sphere 20 kilometers in diameter, rotating slowly against the backdrop of a nebula. Docking arms extended like spokes from its center, accommodating ships of every imaginable design. The Prometheus, sleek and angular with its dark hull, looked almost primitive compared to the organic curves of the Silathi vessels or the geometric perfection of the crystalline collective's ships. The docking procedure was smooth, handled by the station's automated systems that had been perfected over millennia. Sarah adjusted her dress uniform one final time before stepping into the airlock with her small diplomatic team. Commander Jake Torres, her tactical officer, walked beside her. Behind them followed Lieutenant Commander Yuki Tanaka, their xenobiologist, and Dr. Marcus Reed, their cultural specialist. The reception area was a study in alien architecture. The ceiling stretched impossibly high, defying what humans understood about structural engineering. Gravity fields of different intensities overlapped, allowing species of various physiologies to move comfortably. The air carried a mixture of scents, some pleasant, others that made Sarah's nose wrinkle involuntarily. A tall, willowy figure approached them. Ambassador Kretek of the Meridian Confederacy moved with a grace that seemed to defy physics. Her translucent skin showed the play of bioluminescent organs beneath. When she spoke, her voice came through the universal translator with a musical quality. "Admiral Blackwood, the Council awaits your presence. Please follow me." The walk to the Council chamber gave Sarah time to observe. Dozens of species moved through the corridors. Many gave the human delegation a wide berth, their body language expressing what didn't need translation: fear, suspicion, anger. Humanity's reputation had preceded them, though Sarah suspected the other species didn't fully understand what that reputation meant. The Council chamber doors were massive, carved from a single piece of what looked like crystallized starlight. They parted silently as the delegation approached. Inside, the scene was overwhelming. Representatives from over 60 species filled tiered seating that rose in concentric circles around a central platform. Each section was environmentally controlled for its occupants. Some areas were filled with water, others with methane clouds, and still others with environments Sarah couldn't identify. Supreme Chancellor Stor stood at the center, his purple carapace reflecting the chamber's lighting dramatically. His four eyes focused on Sarah as she took her position on the designated platform. The universal translator hummed to life as he began to speak. "Admiral Sarah Blackwood of the United Earth Navy, you stand before this assembly to answer grave charges brought by multiple member species. Your government's military expansion threatens the peace we have maintained for generations." Sarah remained at attention, her expression neutral. She had expected this. Humanity's growth had been rapid by galactic standards. In just 50 years since first contact, they had spread across hundreds of systems. But threatening? That seemed like an exaggeration. Stor continued, his mandibles clicking for emphasis. "Our intelligence networks report massive military buildups in 17 sectors. Your warships patrol trade routes that have been peaceful for centuries. Your species constructs weapons platforms at a rate that alarms even our most militant members. A murmur rippled through the assembly. Sarah noticed several species nodding in agreement. The Quellian representative, a being that looked like a sentient cloud of gas, pulsed an agitated orange color. Furthermore, Vexthor raised one of his upper arms. You have claimed territories in the disputed zones of the Perseus Arm without consultation with this council. The Hive Collective reports your ships have been aggressive in their interactions. The Traders Guild complains of excessive security screenings. And most concerning of all, your military forces in the outer territories have grown to a size that could only be intended for conquest. Sarah waited for him to finish. When Vexthor finally fell silent, she stepped forward. Supreme Chancellor, honored representatives, I thank you for this opportunity to address your concerns. May I first ask what specific intelligence has led to these conclusions? A holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber. Star charts filled the air, with red markers indicating human positions. Sarah studied them carefully. They were accurate mostly. The display showed the positions of Task Force 7 spread across the Perseus Arm. This is your fleet deployment in just one sector, Vexthor said. Over 900 warships. That's more than most species maintain in their entire navy, and our sources indicate you have similar fleets in at least 12 other sectors. Sarah blinked. She looked at Commander Torres, who seemed equally confused. Turning back to the assembly, she spoke carefully. Supreme Chancellor, I believe there's been a misunderstanding. Those 900 ships you've identified are not multiple fleets. That's one task force. The chamber erupted. Species that communicated through sound created a cacophony of disbelief. Those that used color flashed in patterns that probably expressed shock. Others released pheromones that made several sections of the chamber temporarily evacuate. Vexthor raised all four arms for silence. His voice carried a note of anger now. Admiral, do not insult our intelligence. No species maintains task forces of that size. The energy requirements alone would bankrupt most civilizations. Sarah took a breath. This was going to be harder to explain than she thought. Supreme Chancellor, with respect, I'm not being deceptive. Task Force 7 consists of 917 vessels currently. That includes the battleship group centered on the USS Washington, 12 carrier strike groups, 37 destroyer squadrons, and associated support vessels. The Silathi representative, whose species resembled upright octopi, waved several tentacles in agitation. Impossible. You claim a single task force contains 12 of what you call carrier groups? The Silathi Imperial Navy has 3 carriers total, and we are considered a major military power. Perhaps, Sarah said diplomatically, we should discuss the difference in how our species approach naval organization. A human carrier group consists of 1 carrier, 2 cruisers, 6 destroyers, 2 submarines, and various support ships. We consider this the minimum effective combat unit for power projection. The silence that followed was deafening. Even species without auditory organs seemed to contribute to the oppressive quiet. Finally, a small voice spoke from the upper tiers. It was Ambassador Thuval of the Epsilon Reconciliation, a diminutive species known for their mathematical prowess. Admiral Blackwood, if what you say is true and this Task Force 7 is a single unit in your command structure, how many such task forces does humanity possess? Sarah hesitated. This was classified information, but the situation called for transparency. The United Earth Navy currently operates 15 active task forces, with 5 more in reserve status. The chamber erupted again, but this time the tone was different. It wasn't anger or disbelief. It was fear. The revelation Supreme Chancellor Vexthor's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of extreme distress in his species. The mathematical implications of what Admiral Blackwood had just revealed were staggering. If humanity considered 900 ships a single task force and they had 20 such formations, that meant they commanded roughly 18,000 warships. The entire Galactic Assembly's combined military forces numbered less than half that. Admiral, Vexthor's voice had lost its commanding tone. You must understand how this appears to us. Your species has been spacefaring for less than a century. How is such a buildup even possible? Sarah relaxed her stance slightly. The hostility in the room was giving way to genuine curiosity and concern. This was progress. To understand our military structure, you need to understand our history. Humanity spent thousands of years perfecting the art of warfare on our home planet. We had wet navies with hundreds of ships before we even achieved powered flight. She gestured to the holographic display. May I? Vexthor nodded, and Sarah interfaced her datapad with the system. Historical images filled the air. Ancient wooden ships, then steel battleships, then aircraft carriers that dwarfed anything the assembly had imagined could float on water. This is our history, Sarah continued. During our Second World War, which occurred before we even reached our own moon, the United States alone operated over 6,000 ships. The combined navies of all combatants numbered in the tens of thousands. We fought battles where 1,000-plane raids were common. We built ships faster than they could be sunk. The Meridian ambassador leaned forward, but surely that was primitive technology. Simple vessels. Commander Torres stepped forward. With respect, Ambassador, those primitive vessels required crews of thousands. A single World War II carrier had a crew of 3,000 humans. They operated in conditions you would consider impossible, navigating by stars, communicating by radio, fighting while unable to see beyond the horizon. Sarah resumed control of the presentation. When humanity reached space, we applied the same principles. We didn't build ships. We built fleets. We didn't think in terms of single vessels, but in terms of task forces, battle groups, and armadas. It's not aggression. It's our nature. The Quellian representative pulsed a questioning purple. But the resources required. How does your economy support such expenditure? Dr. Reed spoke for the first time. Honored representative, human history shows that military advancement drives civilian technology. Our fusion reactors, developed for warships, now power entire colonies. Our shield technology protects mining operations in asteroid belts. Our jump drives have reduced cargo transport times by 90%. The military investment pays for itself through technological advancement. A new voice interrupted the discussion. It was harsh, mechanical, and came from the section reserved for the Machina Collective. Query: if humanity possesses such overwhelming force, why have they not conquered neighboring systems? Statistical analysis suggests expansion would be trivial. Sarah faced the mechanical representative directly. Because conquest has never been our goal. Every task force maintains its size not for invasion, but for protection. We protect our trade routes, our colonies, and increasingly, we protect ships from other species who travel through our space. Protection from what? Vexthor asked. This sector has been peaceful for millennia. As if the universe had been waiting for that exact moment, alarms began wailing throughout the station. The lights shifted to a deep red, and emergency broadcasts flooded all channels. Sarah's implant immediately connected to the Prometheus, and data flowed into her consciousness. 17 vessels, unknown configuration, have just exited hyperspace, she reported to the stunned assembly. They're jamming communications and moving toward the station at attack speed. Vexthor's carapace went pale. The Ravagers. They were supposed to be a myth. The Ravagers were indeed real, pirates who operated from unknown space, striking at vulnerable targets before disappearing. No one had ever successfully tracked them to their base or defeated more than one or two of their ships at a time. Sarah was already moving. Commander Torres, Signal Task Force 7. Authorization Blackwood Alpha 7. Defensive deployment pattern Sierra. The Silathi representative writhed in panic. Your task force is 3 days away at maximum jump speed. We'll be destroyed before they arrive. Sarah smiled grimly. No, Ambassador. They're 90 seconds away. The main viewing screen activated, showing the space around the station. The 17 Ravager vessels, each a kilometer long and bristling with weapons, approached in attack formation. Then space itself seemed to tear open. Jump points, hundreds of them, appeared in perfect synchronization around the station. Task Force 7 arrived like an ancient cavalry charge translated to 3 dimensions. The USS Washington, a battleship that dwarfed even the station, exited jump space with its escorts in perfect formation. Carrier groups emerged in defensive positions. Destroyer squadrons materialized in attack vectors that had been calculated before the jump. The Ravagers, for the first time in their recorded history, hesitated. Admiral Blackwood activated her command interface. The assembled representatives watched in awe as she coordinated nearly 1,000 ships with the ease of conducting an orchestra. All units, this is actual. Weapons free. Priority is station defense. Eagle and Hawk squadrons establish fighter screen. Submarine units go dark and flank. Battle line, form up on Washington. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted 4 minutes. The Ravager vessels, faced with overwhelming force applied with surgical precision, attempted to flee. 3 made it to jump points. The rest were either destroyed or disabled so quickly that many of the assembly members didn't even process what had happened. But what struck the representatives most wasn't the violence. It was the restraint. Human Marines boarded the disabled vessels, accepting surrenders. Medical ships moved to provide aid to wounded enemies. The entire operation looked less like a battle and more like a law enforcement action. Vexthor found his voice. How were they so close? Sarah turned to face the assembly. Task Force 7 maintains what we call a rapid reaction force. One carrier group is always within 2 minutes jump time of major installations in our patrol area. When I entered the station, they moved to ready positions. It's standard procedure. Standard procedure, the Crystalline Collective representative chimed, their form resonating with what might have been amusement. You maintain a force capable of destroying fleets on standby, as standard procedure. Lieutenant Commander Tanaka stepped forward. If I may, this is what we've been trying to explain. Human military doctrine isn't about conquest. It's about overwhelming response to protect those under our care. We learned long ago that the best way to prevent war is to be so prepared for it that no one dares start one. The assembly remained quiet for a long moment. Finally, Ambassador Thuval spoke again. Admiral Blackwood, I believe I speak for many here when I say we have gravely misunderstood your species. We saw your numbers and assumed aggression. We didn't consider that you might be approaching space travel with the same intensity you approached your oceans. Vexthor's color had returned to normal. The Ravagers have plagued this sector for 300 years. In 4 minutes you ended them. And you did it not to conquer but to protect a station full of species that were, moments ago, considering sanctions against you. Sarah nodded. That's what we do. It's who we are. Humanity doesn't build fleets to conquer stars. We build them to protect those who travel between them. Your trade routes, your colonies, your peaceful vessels, they're all safer because human task forces patrol these spaces. The mood in the chamber had completely shifted. Where there had been fear and suspicion, now there was something approaching awe and perhaps gratitude. The Hive Collective representative, speaking through their translator, said, We formally withdraw our complaint about human military presence. In light of this demonstration, we would actually request increased patrols near our border colonies. One by one, other species began voicing similar sentiments. The Traders Guild representative noted that piracy along human-patrolled routes had dropped to 0. The Epsilon Reconciliation mentioned that their colony ships felt safer knowing human forces were nearby. Vexthor raised his arms for attention. I call for a formal vote. All in favor of withdrawing all charges against humanity and officially requesting their continued military presence in the outer territories. The vote was unanimous. As the session concluded and representatives began filing out, many stopped to thank Sarah and her team personally. The Meridian ambassador lingered, her bioluminescent organs pulsing thoughtfully. Admiral, may I ask you something personally? Kretek's musical voice carried curiosity. Your species maintains 20 task forces of this size. That's nearly 20,000 ships. Do you truly need such numbers just for protection? Sarah looked out at the view screen where Task Force 7 was organizing rescue and salvage operations. Ambassador, humanity has a saying, if you want peace, prepare for war. We maintain these forces not because we expect to use them, but because their very existence prevents us from having to. She paused, then added, but there's another reason. We've studied galactic history. We know there have been great threats before. Species that swept across the galaxy, destroying everything in their path. If such a threat comes again, humanity will be ready. And we won't stand alone. We'll stand in front of our allies, our friends, and even species we've just met. Because that's what humans do. We protect. Kretek's organs pulsed in what Sarah had learned was approval. I believe, Admiral, that the galaxy is fortunate humanity chose to join us among the stars. As Sarah and her team returned to the Prometheus, she reflected on the day's events. First contact with the galactic community had been challenging. Cultural misunderstandings were inevitable when dealing with dozens of different species. But today had shown that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their numbers or their technology. It was their willingness to stand between danger and those who needed protection. The USS Prometheus departed the station accompanied by escort vessels from 12 different species, all requesting formal military cooperation treaties. Task Force 7 remained on station, a visible reminder of humanity's commitment to peace through strength. In his official report to the Galactic Archive, Supreme Chancellor Vexthor would write, We initially feared humanity because we saw their numbers and assumed conquest was their goal. We failed to understand that humans had learned the cost of war on their homeworld and brought to the stars not a desire for empire, but a determination that such costs should never be paid again. They build not one fleet to conquer, but 20 to protect. The galaxy sleeps safer knowing humanity watches the void. The story of humanity's true nature spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Species that had never heard of Earth now knew of the humans who built fleets not for war, but for peace. Pirates and raiders learned to avoid human-protected space entirely, and slowly other species began to adopt human military doctrines, building larger forces not for aggression, but for protection. Admiral Sarah Blackwood would go on to serve another 15 years, overseeing the integration of alien technology and personnel into human task forces. The mixed species crews that resulted became the foundation of what would eventually become the Galactic Defense Force. But that's a story for another day. For now, it was enough that the galaxy understood a simple truth. When humans said they had one fleet in a sector, it wasn't a threat. It was a promise of protection. And behind that one fleet stood 19 more, ready to answer any call for help, from any species at any time. Because that's what humans do. They protect,